My name is David Moreau, and I'm an independent investigator of unexplained historical events. For the past 18 years, I've specialized in cases where official records don't match the witness testimony, stories buried by governments, suppressed by institutions, or simply too disturbing for mainstream historians to acknowledge. I came to the forests of Gévaudan because what happened here between 1764 and 1767 represents one of history's most successful cover-ups. The official story speaks of a large wolf that terrorized the French countryside, killed over 100 people, and was eventually hunted down by royal decree. But after 3 years of research in forgotten archives, interviews with local families whose oral traditions stretch back centuries, and analysis of suppressed church records, I've uncovered evidence of something far more terrifying. What stalked the mountains of south-central France wasn't a wolf at all. It was something that predates human civilization, an entity that the oldest folklore calls Cernobête, the black-horned one of the forest. And despite what the history books tell us, it was never truly destroyed. The attacks began in earnest on June 30th, 1764, when 14-year-old Jean Bellet was found dead near the village of Les Hubacs. Her body was discovered by her brother, and the scene he described in his testimony to local authorities was unlike any wolf attack on record. The girl's throat had been torn out with surgical precision, her blood completely drained, yet there were no feeding marks on the corpse. Most disturbing were the deep gouges in the earth around her body, claw marks that extended nearly 6 inches into the hard-packed soil. Within weeks, similar attacks were occurring throughout the region. Marie Laumet, age 15, killed near Langon. Her body found positioned in a ritualistic manner, arms spread wide, face turned toward the sky. Jean-Baptiste Chastel, age 12, discovered near Cham. Again, complete exsanguination with no evidence of feeding. The local priest, Father François Durand, wrote in a letter to his bishop, "These are not the work of any earthly beast. The precision of the wounds, the positioning of the bodies, suggests an intelligence that no wolf possesses." By autumn of 1764, the creature had claimed over 30 lives. Eyewitness accounts began to emerge that defied natural explanation. Antoine Vallet, a farmer from Saint-Étienne-de-Lugdères, encountered the beast while checking his livestock at dawn on September 15th. His testimony, recorded by the local magistrate, describes a creature unlike any known animal. It stood on its hind legs like a man, but taller 7 feet at least. Its fur was black as midnight, but underneath I glimpsed something like scales. The head was that of a wolf, but the eyes burned red like coals from Hell's Forge. When it saw me watching, it smiled, actually smiled, with teeth longer than my fingers. The creature's hunting patterns revealed an intelligence that wolves simply don't possess. It avoided armed men, targeted isolated victims, and seemed to choose its hunting grounds with strategic precision. More unsettling were the reports of its apparent invulnerability. Jacques Portefaix, a 12-year-old shepherd, led a group of children in an attack against the beast using sharpened sticks and stones. Hay struck it repeatedly, yet their weapons seemed to pass through its body as if striking smoke. The beast retreated not from injury, but seemingly from amusement at their efforts. Father Durand's letters, which I discovered in the sealed archives of the Diocese of Mende, reveal growing desperation among the clergy. In a correspondence dated October 12, 1764, he wrote, "The creature attacks during daylight hours, showing no fear of human presence. Yesterday it took Marie Solignac in full view of 30 witnesses in the market square of Cham. They describe how it leaped from the church roof, a jump of 40 feet, and landed silently among them. The girl screamed once before her throat was opened. The beast fed briefly, then vanished into mist before our eyes. By winter, panic had consumed the entire region." King Louis XV, responding to increasingly frantic reports from local officials, dispatched his royal huntsman, François Antoine, along with a contingent of soldiers and hunting dogs. The official hunt began on February 17, 1765, with great fanfare and confidence. Antoine was France's most skilled tracker, credited with killing numerous wolves throughout the kingdom. He brought with him 40 soldiers, professional hunters, and a pack of Irish wolfhounds specifically trained for large predator elimination. The hunt proceeded with systematic efficiency. Antoine's men scoured the forests, set traps, organized massive drives to flush out any large predators in the region. They killed several wolves and lynx, each time believing they had found their quarry. Yet the attacks continued with increasing frequency and brutality. The turning point came on April 7, 1765, when Antoine's own hunting party was attacked. The official report, filed with the Ministry of War, states simply that the beast was encountered but escaped due to difficult terrain. But Antoine's private journal, which I obtained from his descendants' estate, tells a different story. The creature appeared among us without sound or warning. It moved through our ranks like death itself, untouchable by ball or blade. 3 of my best men died before it withdrew, and their bodies, God forgive me, I cannot write what I witnessed. This is no wolf. This is something from the pit of hell. Public pressure mounted as the death toll climbed past 70. King Louis XV, facing criticism for his inability to protect his subjects from a single animal, dispatched Jean-Charles Marc-Antoine Vimessel d'Inéville, his personal gun-bearer, with orders to end the threat at any cost. Inéville arrived in June 1765 with additional troops, new weapons, and authority to use any methods necessary. What happened next reveals the true nature of the cover-up that followed. In the church archives of St. Flower, I discovered a letter from Father Pierre Ollier, dated July 23, 1765, addressed to Cardinal Alessandro Albani in Rome. The letter, written in Latin and marked with seals indicating papal secrecy, describes an encounter that official histories have never acknowledged. Your Eminence, I write to report that the entity plaguing our region has been positively identified through consultation of the oldest texts. Brother Antoine, keeper of our most ancient manuscripts, has located references to this creature in documents predating the founding of our diocese. The name given is Cernobête, the black-horned one of the forest. The texts describe it as a predator from the time before Christ's light reached these lands, when the old Celtic gods held dominion over the wild places. The letter goes on to describe rituals found in these ancient texts, ceremonies designed not to kill Cernobête, but to bind it temporarily and drive it into dormancy. Father Ollier requested permission to perform these rites, writing, "The methods prescribed are of pagan origin and deeply troubling to Christian conscience. Yet if they offer the only means to stop this slaughter, surely God will forgive the desperate measures of his servants." The royal hunters, meanwhile, had discovered that conventional weapons were useless against the creature. Musket balls passed through its body without effect, blades could not pierce its hide, and even iron traps closed harmlessly around its limbs. Inéville's reports to Versailles, preserved in the Ministry of War archives, describe increasingly desperate attempts to harm the beast using blessed weapons, silver bullets, and even cannon fire. Nothing worked. The breakthrough came in September 1765, when local folklore provided the answer that science and military might could not. An elderly woman named Marguerite Chastel approached Father Ollier with knowledge passed down through 12 generations of her family. She claimed her ancestors had been Druids before the Roman conquest, keepers of the old ways and guardians against the creatures of the deep forest. According to Marguerite's testimony, recorded in Father Ollier's private journal, Cernobête was not truly a physical creature but a manifestation of primal darkness that had haunted these mountains since before human memory. It fed not just on blood, but on fear and suffering, growing stronger with each kill. The ancient Celts had learned to appease it with ritual sacrifices, keeping it dormant for centuries at a time. But as Christianity displaced the old religion, the protective ceremonies had been forgotten, allowing Cernobête to wake and hunt freely. The solution, Marguerite explained, lay not in killing the creature, which was impossible, but in performing the ancient binding ritual that would force it back into dormancy. The ceremony required specific conditions. It must be performed at the full moon, in a sacred grove marked by standing stones, with implements forged from iron taken from the earth of the creature's first kill site. Father Ollier, desperate for any solution, convinced Inéville to attempt the ritual. On the night of September 19, 1765, a secret ceremony was performed in a grove of ancient oaks near Mont Mouchet. The participants included Father Ollier, Marguerite Chastel, Enivel, and 6 local men who had volunteered despite the obvious dangers. The ritual, as described in Father Ollier's encrypted journal, began at midnight with the construction of a binding circle using iron filings and blessed salt. Marguerite spoke incantations in a language she claimed was older than Latin, words that seemed to make the air itself vibrate with power. As the ceremony progressed, the temperature in the grove dropped dramatically, and witnesses reported seeing their breath despite the warm autumn night. Cernobête appeared at the height of the ritual, materializing from the darkness between the oak trees. Father Ollier's description is terrifying in its detail. The creature stood 9 feet tall, its black fur rippling like liquid shadow. The horns that gave it its name curved from its skull like those of a great ram, but twisted and scarred as if by centuries of battle. Its eyes were pits of red flame that seemed to peer into the very essence of our souls. When it opened its maw to roar, I saw rows of teeth like curved daggers, and behind them, a throat that descended into endless darkness. The binding worked, partially. Cernobête was trapped within the ritual circle, unable to break free from the ancient constraints. But as Marguerite had warned, the creature could not be destroyed, only contained. The ritual required a guardian to maintain the binding, someone who would remain in the forest and perform renewal ceremonies each full moon for the rest of their natural life. Jean Chastel, Marguerite's great-nephew, volunteered for this duty. A hunter by trade and a man of exceptional courage, he agreed to become Cernobête's prison warden in exchange for the safety of the region. The binding ritual was modified to link his life force to the creature's containment. As long as he lived and performed the monthly ceremonies, Cernobête would remain dormant. But a problem remained: how to explain the sudden end of the attacks to a public demanding answers and a king expecting results. The solution was an elaborate deception that would become one of history's most successful cover-ups. On September 20th, 1765, Jean Chastel was publicly credited with killing the Beast of Gévaudan during a hunt organized by local nobles. A large wolf, shot and stuffed for display, was presented as the creature that had terrorized the region. The official story claimed that this wolf, larger and more aggressive than normal due to crossbreeding with dogs, had been responsible for all the attacks. The deception was maintained at the highest levels of government. Enivel returned to Versailles with detailed reports of the successful hunt, complete with fabricated witness testimonies and staged evidence. King Louis XV, relieved to have the crisis resolved, awarded Jean Chastel a pension and public recognition for his service. The truth was buried in sealed church archives and encrypted government files, known only to a handful of individuals bound by oaths of secrecy. Jean Chastel faithfully maintained the binding for 11 years, living as a hermit in the forests of Gévaudan and performing the monthly renewal rituals that kept Cernobête dormant. His journal, which I obtained from his descendants' estate, reveals the psychological toll of his guardianship. The final entry, dated March 15, 1776, reads, "I can feel my strength failing. The creature grows restless with each passing month, testing the boundaries of its prison. I have trained my son in the rituals, but I fear he lacks the will to maintain them. God forgive me. I should have let the beast free rather than pass this burden to another generation." Jean Chastel died in his sleep on March 18, 1776. His son, Pierre, attempted to continue the guardianship but abandoned his post after 6 months, unable to endure the psychological pressure of living in constant proximity to such evil. The binding began to weaken immediately. By 1780, strange incidents were again being reported in the forests of Gévaudan. Livestock found drained of blood, travelers disappearing on forest roads, and occasional sightings of a large, shadowy creature moving through the trees. But these incidents were isolated and sporadic, suggesting that Cernobête remained partially bound by the degrading remnants of the original ritual. The French Revolution and subsequent wars provided perfect cover for the occasional disappearances and unexplained deaths that occurred in the region. In times of political upheaval and social chaos, a few missing persons attracted no official attention. Cernobête began to hunt again, but cautiously, taking care not to create the patterns of violence that had exposed it in the 1760s. My research reveals that similar incidents have continued sporadically for the past 2 centuries. Local newspapers from the 1800s contain scattered reports of unexplained animal attacks, always dismissed as wolf or bear encounters. Police records from the 1900s document missing persons cases in the Gévaudan region at rates significantly higher than surrounding areas. Most telling are the reports I've gathered from park rangers, hikers, and hunters who describe encounters with something that doesn't match any known species. François Blanc, a forest ranger with 30 years of experience in the Gévaudan forests, agreed to speak with me on condition of anonymity. His account, recorded just last month, provides chilling evidence that Cernobête remains active. I've worked these mountains my entire adult life, and I know every animal that lives here. What I've seen 3 times in the past decade isn't natural. It moves like liquid shadow, makes no sound, and leaves tracks that appear and disappear as you watch. The first time I saw it, I was checking a campsite after reports of disturbances. I found the tent shredded, the occupants gone, and blood drained into the earth in perfect circles. No scavenger feeding, no signs of struggle, just 2 people erased from existence. The most disturbing evidence comes from the church records of surrounding parishes. Father Michel Dubois, currently serving at St. Flower Cathedral, showed me baptismal records dating back to 1780 that reveal an unusual pattern. Approximately every 20 to 30 years, families in the Gévaudan region begin naming their children after protective saints. Michael the Archangel, Gabriel, Raphael, at rates far higher than in other regions. When I asked Father Dubois about this pattern, he admitted that the church maintains unofficial guidelines for clergy serving in the Gévaudan area. We're advised to take seriously any reports of unusual animal encounters, to investigate missing persons cases more thoroughly than normal procedure requires, and to maintain supplies of blessed weapons and holy water at all times. The evidence suggests that Cernobête has never been truly dormant, merely cautious. Without Jean Chastel's binding rituals, the creature has gradually regained its full power while learning to avoid the attention that nearly led to its containment in 1765. It has adapted to the modern world, spacing its hunts across decades rather than months, targeting isolated individuals rather than creating the pattern of mass killings that originally exposed it. Modern technology may actually work in the creature's favor. Missing persons cases that once required extensive local investigation can now be explained away as voluntary disappearances into anonymous urban environments. Bodies that are never found can be attributed to accidental falls into remote ravines or rivers. The interconnected world that should make such disappearances more noticeable instead provides more convenient explanations for them. But perhaps most disturbing is evidence suggesting that Cernobête may be preparing to end its centuries of cautious hunting. Climate change and increased human activity in previously remote forest areas are shrinking the creature's habitat and limiting its hunting grounds. Environmental pressures that might drive any animal to desperate measures could force Cernobête to abandon its careful discretion and return to the open hunting patterns of the 1760s. The historical record makes clear that when Cernobête last hunted without restraint, it took the combined efforts of the French military, the Catholic Church, and ancient Celtic magic to contain it. Today's world lacks both the institutional knowledge of the creature's true nature and the cultural framework necessary to combat it effectively. Modern authorities would approach Cernobête as a conventional predator, using methods that the 18th century hunters proved utterly useless. I leave you with this warning. The forests of Gévaudan remain dangerous, not because they harbor wolves or bears, but because they conceal something far older and more malevolent. Cernobête, the black-horned one of the forest, still walks among the ancient oaks and stands of pine. It watches from the shadows, patient and intelligent, waiting for the right moment to emerge from hiding and reclaim its role as apex predator of the French countryside. The official histories tell us that the Beast of Gévaudan died in 1765, killed by a local hunter's silver bullet. But the truth is far more terrifying. We never killed it at all. We only taught it to be more careful. And now, after more than 2 centuries of careful hunting, it may be running out of patience. If you ever find yourself walking alone in the forests of south-central France, remember this. When the shadows seem to move independently of the trees, when you hear footsteps that match your pace too perfectly, when you feel eyes watching from the darkness beyond your flashlight's reach, you may not be encountering the stuff of legend. You may be meeting something that has been perfecting the art of human predation since before your civilization learned to write down its fears. Something that has never forgotten the taste of human blood, never abandoned its ancient hunting grounds, and never forgiven humanity for attempting to cage it. Something that is still very much alive, still very much hungry, and still very much hunting in the forests of Gévaudan. The beast was never slain. It only learned to hunt in silence.